Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
What's up, everybody? This is your co-host, Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average podcast-producing badass.
I'm John Thomas. Some would say that I go a little too far with my love of all things horror, paranormal, and meta, but I say, talk nerdy to me, and I'm all yours.
I'm BJ Sewura, an aspiring paranormal musician who plays live for the dead because the living just doesn't want to hear me.
The Dead of Winter Horror Network and Nick Kane from the 508 Productions invite you to endure the most terrifying immersive experience in all of podcasting. Beneath the Red Umbrella, now available wherever you listen to podcasts. Beneath the Red Umbrella, when the snow falls, the killing season begins.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our spiritual tribe out there? In today's episode, we'll be diving into the world of source code and light language. Joining us on this journey is fellow podcaster, Galactic Shaman, crystalline soul healer, and Reiki master, Deanna Divine. Welcome to the show, Deanna.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yes, of course. And how are you doing this week?
Wonderful. I'm coming off, there's so many things happening. I had this beautiful conference this weekend. It's called Lyran Conference. So talking about light language, I got to channel the codes to many people, more connected to we can talk more about different star seeds and what the language is, but Lyra is where kind of my soul originated. So some of the paintings you see behind me are kind of the feline beings, and that's what Lyran language is about.
Now, what exactly is light language?
So light language has existed on Earth always, and we just knew it by different names. So when in the church they were saying speak in tongues, that is the same thing. It's just it assumed that it was some sort of divine phenomenon of some sort of energy that would take over the person, and they would just produce these weird sounds, right? And so in the church environment, the priests were kind of demeaning that and saying, oh, the demon took over. But it's not true. It's actually something that we all connected to, and we actually all can channel light language. The original or the formal terminology for it, if you were to Google, is glossolalia, which is the phenomenon where you essentially channeling the divine spark or divine energy. But even going further out, essentially, we all speak linear languages. So whether it's English or I speak Russian and Hebrew, it doesn't matter what type of earthly languages, they're very linear in the way that a certain word means a certain things, right? So we have direct translation word to word. Light language is a frequency language. It's the language of the heart. So it's very multidimensional. So one thing can mean many things. And it's not so much about understanding it through the mind. It's more feeling it in your body, through your cells, through your heart. Like it invokes the different psychic phenomenon. Like some people feel heat or tingly. Some people have, colors or, pictures. So the different frequencies invoke different sensations, and the different frequencies bring with them different codes. So it hits the blueprint of the person, and each one can feel it in different ways. So it's not exactly this. The experience, Ashley, you're going to have is going to be different than experience of John and BJ, even though I was doing it for all of you at the same time, let's say. So just like channeling, where people just connect to some, being or entity, and they channel that information in English. This is similar type of thing, but it's more channeling through my higher self. So I'm not channeling some sort of entity that's outside of me. I am connecting directly to the source of who I am. And in that source of who I am, I'm able to tap to different frequencies. So usually when it opens up with people, they start with the language of the system they knew before they came to Earth, where they spend the most time. So if we were to talk about like the ETs, the extraterrestrial beyond Earth, there's many different constellations in this galaxy alone. You have Lyra, you have Sirius, you have Andromeda, you have Arcturus, Pleiades. So each one of these systems have different languages. And within each system, there's dialects. Like just like in U.S., you have the Southern dialect versus the New York dialect. So you have different dialects. So that's the galactic ones. But then you can have angelic. The angelic is usually singing. You can have deities that you can also bring frequencies of, elementals, even the fairies, the dragons, the unicorns, everything has a language. It's think of it as just like a frequency that you verbally can bring in. So it's when people receive it, it can be healing, just like Reiki or any energy healing. You can move and shift energy with it. So if, sometimes people send energy in a distance and they kind of manipulate where it goes and how it heals a person, I can do the same thing here with the verbally, but also when I channel it, I also move my hands and they kind of move together. So I'm literally writing these codes as I'm channeling, and it's very spontaneous and organic. Usually they call it signing. So I'm signing the codes etherically. And then I'm also verbally speaking, singing. You can also write them. So the different paintings you see behind me, those are kind of channeled. Not all of them are mine. This one is mine. So any type of art is really light language. So it's expression of the soul. It's how the soul wants to show itself and bring that vibrational frequency and light into expression. Even dancing. Sometimes you dance and you feel energy moving. That can be called light language too.
So, light language is the frequency, and the expression is just based on the individual and how they receive it?
Absolutely, because each one of us, it's the other way I like to call it is also source language. So it's expression. We are all part of the source. We're all part of the oneness. But each one of us have very individual expression. There's not one being that's alike, because we carried each one of us had specific experience beyond Earth in different galaxies, collected these experiences into who they are at this moment in time. So their expression, their frequency signature is going to be very different than someone else's. Yes, so through their channel, they can bring those frequencies through. But again, like I said, some people are more connected to specific constellations or the specific systems they come from. So when they channel these languages, usually it's from those places. And at some point you get so comfortable. So I, for instance, in one transmission, I bring in sometimes 5, 6 different ones. And so it starts like sometimes with Lyran that I do throat clearing. It can be a Draco, which is at least like more reptilian, draconian type of language. It's very like Klingon in Star Trek. If you remember, it's very rough and rushed, versus Lyran is very beautiful and melodic. It's very like kuranya titian. It's very hard opening versus like to do, it's like kut ik ik. So your throat, like when I started on this journey of light language about 7 years ago, I remember at the beginning my throat was like, oh wow, like as a human I'm not used to these sounds. Like I didn't even know I could produce them. So you have to really drop into being a kid and just like play with that, because everything is in the beginning very uncomfortable. And this is what I teach people, like step outside of what you know, your belief systems about language in general, and just get to play. And yeah, we have access really, because in our DNA, we carry over 25 different genes of the whole galaxy, really. So we have access to all these frequencies. And usually, you get comfortable with the kind of the place you came from the most, like your birth language, so to speak, and then you can expand.
You mentioned like being a kid again and playing, and it kind of makes me wonder, when we're kids, if what we're doing when we're playing is actually just channeling all the different light languages.
Totally. It's like people call it gibberish, right? And And that's really not gibberish. I feel the kids are very open because they still open channels and they don't have those like conditions by the society. You're not allowed to do this, you're allowed to do that. And even with my kid, I kind of give him that permission slip when he was 5 years old to start speaking to me in light language. And now we communicate in that. He's in sixth grade. Of course, he doesn't do it in front of his friends, and he hides it and he's like, shh, mom. But it's a beautiful expression for him because sometimes he's doesn't have enough words to express what he feels and the emotions. And the frequency language it's a quantum language. There's so much more he can express to me, and it's the sweetest expression. Like it's like our secret kind of connection. It develops really deep bonds. And so what I was showing is that a lot of people right now, talking about yoga, right? So 30 years ago, yoga was like unknown, like it wasn't as mainstream as it is today. So a lot of the beings I've been connected to was showing me that light language, it has been here always, but like I said, it was suppressed because our power was suppressed through the religious institutions. It's coming back online naturally. And I'm seeing that a lot of my friends who are on different spiritual journeys, whether they're sometimes in plant medicine ceremonial spaces where all of a sudden it's just like takes over them and they're like, what is that? Oh my God, I gotta call Deanna because she does that. That happens a lot, and they sometimes unexpectedly have that experience, or they just hearing it somewhere on YouTube and it just resonates with them, and they're like, I know this, like deep down on the soul level, like I understand this. Why do I understand it? Why do I resonate? So it's starting, I think all of us are coming into this place like with the yoga where we're more ready for what's next for us. And I don't think we're ready fully yet for telepathic communication, but the beings, Lemurian beings and Shasta were showing me this is kind of the next thing of us really stepping into our soul memory and we remembering how to speak and to each other in light language.
Do we, when we're learning, do we already know these languages inherently? Like, I know
We
you said,
do.
so
Yeah.
it's from your higher self, basically. It's more of a discovery that you know these languages rather than a learning, right?
That's right. You got it, BJ. Like, it's not about learning it at all with the mind. It's all about discovery. I literally just had a session because I have a self-paced course. I used to do like 8-week program with a group, but we took that and digitized that. So it's a self-paced course, but people can still do coaching hours. So one of my students, she was just, she did the course, but she's like, I just want validation. So we did some exercises together in a dialogue. And it was just a lot of it is building that confidence and reconnected to that memory that we can do it. And I'm just kind of holding that space for her to produce these sounds. And she's like went into it and like a little deeper. And I told her like a lot of it is practice, like everything else. Like we start something new, it feels weird. It feels like it's unnatural in the beginning, again, because we're unpeeling the onion, because we unpeeling the conditionality of all the things we've been told we're allowed or not allowed to do to come back into being a kid. But I feel those who are more in that innocence, it's easier for them because then they're like, oh, I'm just having fun. I'm just like doing gibberish. But really the difference with gibberish versus source language or light language is energy to it. Like you feel it in your body. There's like a validation through your body, and there's the resonance of like, oh, this feels right. Or there's a soul song. Like it can be a song, like the angelic codes, they're all through singing. So there's a song that each of us kind of carries. So I also encourage everyone to kind of find their song. And really for us, I feel the chakra that's blocked for collective in general is the throat. So like during COVID, I've doing so many activations with people and all had to do with the throat, because I think we kind of come into this place of speaking our truth, right? And being really comfortable with that truth, whatever that truth sounds like, and trusting our truth from the heart. And so breaking through like the block of expression is the biggest thing, because if all of us collectively spoke a truth and stood together and held hands, this would be a very different world. And that's the world we're moving into right now. We're shifting into this new quantum era of reality where more people are waking up and we remembering their really beautiful psychic gifts. So you could say this is psychic. I mean, this is clairvoyant. This is everything. But all these abilities we inherently have, each one of us. Not one is born with it. I think it's a good story. I was believing that story too. I was always saying, "Oh, I'm not a psychic. I'm not a medium. I'm not this. I'm not that." But it's a story we're creating for ourselves. But ultimately, actually, everything is available for us because we are quantum beings. We are beings of light, and we are connected to this field, this quantum field of information. Just like in Star Wars, there's the Force, and if you are part of the Force and you the Jedi with the Force, then you are it, and you can also bring that into this reality by even speaking it. Yeah.
When were you first aware of your metaphysical gifts?
For me, it started when I was about 20 years old. I had my first Reiki initiation. It was actually in Israel where I grew up, but I actually came here and then I had to go back. And I just felt energy. I think that was my biggest like opening of my eyes. I was like, whoa, I'm feeling heat. I'm feeling something moving through me. And then I was curious. I think curiosity is what drove me through my whole journey. And it's been, 25 years of exploration in many rabbit holes. I've done everything from shamanic teachings and traditions to so I like to weave everything together, like the science, the esoterics, the shamanism, to understand it all from different perspectives and be that bridge to speak that language. So it's not all woo-woo for people, because sometimes people really step back and like, well, actually, and right now it's beautiful because there's so many scientific studies are being done in the realm of quantum with biology, and we finally have some things that can prove that what we're saying actually can be measured. So science is just catching up. But yeah, trying to find the connections and bring it to people in a way that they can relate to through experiences. So experiential for me, because we can talk about framework, which is a key to a lot of the things that I teach, like the metaphysics, but then I like the experience as well. So when it becomes real for you and you actually feel it, then you're like, oh wow, there's something here.
Now, you mentioned integrating in all of these different modalities. Are these integrations things that you kind of intuitively discovered, oh, that fits and this connects along the way? Or are there specific places you go for resources to learn more about them?
I think maybe at some point in my path, I did not know where I'm going. So it was, I feel like divine intervention where the right teacher, the right person shows up and you just feel in that moment like that synchronicity flow where you just know this is exactly what you meant to do. So I feel like I've been on that journey definitely the last 15 years where things been opening up and blossoming and constantly kind of navigating new spaces of learning. And yeah, the right things just were always there, new rabbit holes and curiosity. But I think now I'm in the place of what I call the mastery, where I met my husband. He's my kind of divine counterpart about 8 years ago. And so we've been teachers to each other. He's my twin flame. So, and that's kind of a relationship where two people kind of vibrate on the same frequency. And so we've been already at that level where we just, just kind of supporting each other and teaching others. So I think you first a student and then you remember and then you become a teacher. And so I've been more of a teacher, but I'm always curious. There's always new things to uncover. The rabbit hole's ever wide. So I'm always excited to find new information. And just like you guys have a podcast where I have other people come on and ask them questions because I don't have all the answers. I feel we're all collecting constantly pieces of information. So I do a lot of past life regression work, and I have clients come in and then there's a conversation with the higher self. And through these sessions, I discover a lot of incredible information. Some, beings come through and they tell me about nature, reality, and there's always something new to uncover. So I love collecting the pieces and weaving them together into something like, oh, this makes sense, and discussing that in podcasts and in the process of writing a book about it as well.
That's great. I do have a question about the past life regression.
Yeah.
So did that come after, or was it kind of part of it? And also, I guess my big thing is like I'm kind of new to it. I mean, I've been through the podcast, obviously, like you said, we've been learning from each other, and for me, it's been a new journey and it's been great. But also, I always wonder like how many people actually know about past life regression and what it can do for you, right? Because it's not just learning about your past lives, like it's what it can do for you in this life. And I think a lot of people could benefit from that, and maybe they just don't know.
Yeah. So for me, I call myself a galactic shaman. So, and why galactic is because I was a shaman for a while, just kind of doing the typical kind of traditional things. And usually it's some of the practices where, with the drum, where you take people into more what they call underworld, and you take them through, like, shamanic journeys, and they find their power animal, and all of that is beautiful. Again, like anything that helps people to connect to the essence of who they are. I also work with the plant medicine work, and ayahuasca, mushroom medicine, and that's another, deep way to go into these different states of consciousness to learn about yourself. And I think I came in the last few years to a place where I realized I don't want those, especially plant medicine, I don't want those training wheels or, shortcuts anymore. But I believe the best way to help others is to take them into these states of consciousness without any supporters. And I've been playing with the regression work for many years, and I just started taking it more seriously with the client work, and specifically the one that I take people through. It's called QHHC, which is quantum healing hypnosis. So all the work I do is very quantum, and again, quantum just means working with the field, but also because of all the shamanic work I've done, and because I connect to the galactic starseed information, I'm very comfortable in these different realities. And when people actually go, time is not linear. Time is malleable and open. So if you think of time, it's like stacks of paper, right? So the past, the future, the present, they all exist at the same time. So at any point, you can actually go back into time and reopen time and experience the experience like it's happening in this moment. And if there's something that you have to heal in that moment, you can heal in that process and then move into the next life. And that's exactly what's happening with the quantum healing hypnosis. So when people come to me, they come with specific questions related to their current life, right? Related to things they want to find out that's important for them now, or some sort of health issue they're experiencing, or issue with their partners. And quantum healing hypnosis was created by Dolores Cannon, which was pioneer in regression work. She regressed thousands of people and wrote all his books, and incredible modality that I think works really well. And she always said, we travel in soul groups. So the lessons we had to learn, let's say, with someone who was, a brother maybe in past life, today he is my best friend, tomorrow he's going to be my best man, and so it's the same cast of characters that we kind of interact with constantly. And if there's some karmic lessons we have to learn, we kind of make these soul contracts ahead of time that we're like, oh, we're going to come together in these configuration and relearn these lessons again, because especially if we didn't learn them in our previous lifetimes. So if you haven't, let's say, an issue with your current partner, so I'm just a facilitator, right? I'm just guiding them through the experience, and their higher self chooses which lives to show them. So we talk usually, I interview them about all their, their family, their relationships, all the issues that happen from. So there's a little bit of therapy in there, so I can understand who the person is, and then I take them into their past lives, and I never really know where it's going to go. It can be on Earth, it can be off Earth. It depends on what the person is ready for. and what information is relevant for them. So their high self chooses the most appropriate time and place. It could be in the future. It rarely happens. It's usually somewhere in the past. And usually it's an event where it's, there's clarity around what they're experiencing right now. There's always a theme. So if I take them through three lifetimes, there's always the same theme in some ways or another that shows up, and there's always a lesson. So when they go through the hypnosis, I drop them deep into theta, which is basically the deeper brainwave when we're in a dream space, but they're still conscious, so they can speak from that place. But the pictures and everything is very real. The emotions too. So like, let's say if they experience in death, it's like as though they're experiencing death in that moment, and they see it very vividly, they feel it. And sometimes it's maybe too traumatic. So I tell them like to be an observer and not experience it because it's too much. And then the most interesting part actually is not even the past lives, is the conversation with the higher self, because they're so deep in the hypnosis. Then we invite the subconscious self or the higher self. Some people pass out completely. They don't even remember. And the whole session is recorded, because if the higher self really comes through, sometimes the ego is really like trying to hold it back and not let them. But if the person, and I have to like do my magic to allow the person to surrender. And the session is good as the person surrendering and allowing, of course. If their logical brain is too strong in controlling, it's hard to break through. But most of the sessions always worked well. It was only a couple of people that I couldn't regress. Most of the people are able to be regressed. Even my dad. I was, doing a session for my dad. And I was so worried. I was like, oh, and he actually had a really incredible session. And actually in that conversation with the higher self, I ask all the questions that a person came with. And it's incredible, like the information you receive, the guidance, the healing that can be happening in that moment. That one deep session really is enough for a person just one time. Like there's just so much information to integrate from that. And so I feel some people are saying like, is this really important in a awakening and ascension process in your spiritual journey to know your past lives? I myself remembered a lot of my past lives without any regression work, but I feel for those who haven't, like it's good practice to at least know some aspects of yourselves, or at least reclaim that energy and close it, especially in those moments where trauma happened, to bring it into here and now and integrate it. Because some of the stuff we carry is not only from this lifetime, often it is from other lifetimes. And whether it's through regression work, or sometimes people come to me and I just do like overall clearing of their field and recalibrating the whole energy field and the geometry. So and then during that clearing, I can see some of their past lives. They come up like that, the traumas, because the traumas, I see them as these knots of energy sitting in people's energy field. And because they sit in there, they're not allowing the energy to flow properly. So it's like these blocks of energy. And so often it's like drains them, they feel fatigued, or they're not optimal in how they can be. So to be ultimate, I call it quantum master creator of this reality, you have to clear the traumas, however you do it, whether you do it yourself through what some call shadow work, or you have someone like me come in and help in other ways. But I love doing regression work because I always get such interesting stories. It's like you tap into people's soul stream in such ways, and you never know who's going to come through. I had a really interesting like ET information that I collect through that too. Like it's just really fun.
Now, when you are working with the quantum healing and hypnosis with people, have you ever encountered other messages or entities trying to get through to speak to you during that time?
Not in that way. Usually it's that higher self of the person, because that's what I'm inviting. I don't really let anything else to come through because that's not the point of the session. So, but that being can have conversations with me directly, and that happened many times. So actually one of my first sessions, I remember it was a friend of mine, and she channeled, her galactic dragon came through. That was her higher self. And she completely passed out, did not remember that part at all, but it was really intense, fierce being that had a lot of information about, guardian dimensions and a lot of interesting, juicy information, I would say, about metaphysics and understanding of, this galaxy. And so I had a lot of questions, and he interacted with me directly because I had those questions, and he was giving me information. And at the same time, it's fun when they like talk about the human in the third person. They're like, I've been telling her all along, but she doesn't want to listen, or this and that. And usually that's they have interesting sense of humor, that's for sure. But and very kind of like, we're here to support, but because it's the highest self it's not just an entity, it's usually a collective too. So I've had those experiences where, or Arcturian self, some star seeds, or that galactic dragon, I think was the most exciting one to interact with.
We've actually heard about the dragons on a couple different episodes for sure. It's very, very interesting just to hear that's still, I mean, that's just an ongoing thing, right? It's a rare thing for sure. But I guess my big question is, why are they such a support system? Why are they trying to help us in particular? Like, what does it matter?
So the dragons are, there's like, very big question. So there's different types of dragons, right? So there's dragons as beings that are from the Draco system that were here from a different universe, longer than we even have, because a lot of us, we're a mix of the different star seeds, right? And we actually have dragon codes within us too. So of course they're interested in our evolution, and they're usually neutral beings and protectors of the realms. They have vast interest in evolution, just other beings as well. They're interested in humanity, because all the beings interested in humanity, where we're going to go. It's just never has happened that all these codes could be put in one race the way we have. And it's like a galactic federation kind of experiment, I think, that's happening here on Earth. And they're all interested and supportive. They are actually dragons that we all have in our field, at least one. That each one of you, each person has a dragon in their field that works for them as a guardian. So if you tap into that being, and there's like different colors, sometimes it's a female, sometimes it's a male. Like mine, she's a female, she's like pink, purple color, and they have like usually a voice to them too. Like I can do a little bit of mine. Ho hua hi hunudu hu hua na hi uhu mai ha yi hu hu ambu hu hu. That's my dragon. She's she's very interesting, but she's always here, kind of like also guiding me and supporting me. So just like we think of angels, in each of us have angelic support. The dragons in that field too. There's also rainbow dragons. They again, we call them dragons, but it's kind of frequencies that within that field as well. And then there's dragons as folklore dragons. And another incredible thing with the dragons, I was in Iceland last year, and we were on this beach, and there was this huge dragon petrified on the beach. So that was so unexpected and wild. And we're like, how is there a dragon on the beach? And so we looked at it, and I think the dragons were all here, alive eons ago. And I think there were some maybe galactic wars that were happening on Earth too that petrified. There were trolls, not just dragons, trolls as well, like massive trolls in this one part of Iceland where you could see they were like stopped on their tracks and petrified in the moment. So some sort of displacement weapons probably were used against them. So I think there were just, different types of dragons. There's the frequency dragons, and then I think there is the dragons who like actually like here on Earth, and then there is dragons that's still alive on Earth in some caves that I sleep in. And I have a dear friend who is she calls herself a dragon whisperer, And so she works with these dragons, and she says it's not time yet to wake them up. There's definitely a dragon in Bhutan, in the Himalayan mountains that she works with. So yeah, dragons are fascinating. And I think we in the year of the dragon, right, we connect into these frequencies because they also activate in our soul memories. They're part of that kind of reawakening collective.
Now, you also mentioned that there are fae. So, what part do the fae play in all of this? Are they also there to support and like an extension of our network?
Absolutely. Fae are fun. There's elemental fae. They in the forest, so they a lot of fun. They bring a lot of giddiness and like that playfulness energy and innocence. So they like lali tutania titania nekatatani that's fae. They're very like high frequency, very fast. And there's also galactic fae, which is more kind of like the galactic dragons that had So the fae. And then not necessarily always this tiny little Tinkerbells that we think of. I think it's just how we perceive them, but they available too. They also very close. Some are as elementals that are here, like in Iceland. Again, I had so much experience around the Fae because there's so many of them there. They just live in this kind of like parallel realm, but on Earth. It's just we don't perceive it maybe with our eyes, but they're like pockets of like in these rocks the fae lives at. And then there's the fae that more like human size too, that I feel galactically are also present. So just like the dragons, they support us, and they're here to interact with us if we're ready to interact with them. The elemental fae that can be in your garden, they love flowers, they love sweet things. They have their personalities. They're very independent, like cats. they usually don't have soul contracts per se with us. They just come and go, and we can choose to interact with them or not. But they've always been here with us on Earth. Yeah.
Now, what differentiates between what we call elementals and elemental fae? Like, is there a difference?
When we say elementals, I think it's like a category of all the frequencies, right? So for me, elementals can be unicorns. Anything that's alive is elemental for me. So even mushrooms for me are elemental. I mean, there's like mineral kingdom, right? That's not elemental, but even mineral kingdom has its own like frequency. So everything is alive, really. If we think that, if we think we're in the Sims game and we kind of co-creating with this reality, just like there's different levels of it, everything can interact with us just from the level, like plants, for instance, right? They also have an experience and frequency if we just like tune and listen. And that's elemental energy as well. So it just phase one of the frequencies that we kind of know because of the folklore, but there's many others. Elves, and elvins, and you name it. There's just so many. In Iceland, they have a university because they categorize at least 50, they call them hidden people, at least 50 hidden people. So you can just imagine how many.
You mentioned going to Iceland. Are there any other particular places in the world that you know of that are, homes for different elementals or different beings that you could tell us about?
I think the further you are from the city, the more in nature you are, the more supportive it is of these energies. I think the reason there's so many in Iceland because it's so far away from everything. It's pretty quiet energetically, and it's an island. First of all, it's surrounded by water, so I experienced a lot of it usually on the islands. So like Azores Islands in Portugal, many interesting experiences there, Hawaii, New Zealand. So I've really traveled the world, and I feel the further you go, and definitely more in island type of environment, there's more presence of those energies. But not as many in Iceland. I have to say Iceland was very surprising. And I love that they track it. I think it just, the Icelandic people, at least the older generation, they're really open to it. The newer generation, is starting to get a little disconnected. But the older generation, in folklore and everywhere, they're so supportive of these energies. And like, for instance, if there is a road they have to build, and they have like a stone, or they know the elves live in that area, they wouldn't build a road. They would like actually go and protest against the construction company and do all these things to ensure the road is built around it. I mean, how beautiful is that? It's like the connection to these energies, and knowingness that exists, and cherishing and doing offerings. That's something we really lost, I think, in our modernization. We lost the traditions, we lost the connections to, all the elements, doing the offerings and the ceremonies that we used to do in indigenous times, where there was, the Native Americans, of course, still I feel most connected, but we just have to bring that back into our awareness.
Now, on your website, you mentioned being a high brain living facilitator. What does that mean?
Oh my gosh, the high brain living facilitator that was a modality that actually started by a chiropractor. It's very connected now to the Kundalini activation work that I do. So in our body, we have a toroidal field. So in somatic intelligence. So often, we have, for me, my journey started with the fact that I had all these back issues since I was pretty young. And so I was going to chiropractic and realigning my body. But actually what needed to come together is my mind, body, spirit, energy connection. And so finally I found a chiropractor that was more connected to the energy, not just doing, the regular adjustments. And I've learned that there are certain, points on the body, like specific meridian points, like when you go and get acupuncture. So when you activate those points, there's energy that starts flowing through your body and circuits that start getting activated. So the high brain living facilitator is actually learning how to do a program with people to activate these certain circuits and do this particular activations on the body. Now I'm layering that with the light language, and so I started doing these workshops now with the sound healing and Kundalini activation, I call them now, when I'm actually activating the circuits but also activating the energy flow, the Kundalini energy. And Kundalini we all have as well. It's just, again, what I was mentioning about the traumas usually hold the energy back, but we are very electrical beings. Like, we have so much energy flowing through our system, and it's beautiful when it's kind of like when you go and you get your Reiki session, but you can actually activate it within yourself. You don't need someone else to heal you. You can heal yourself if you start being Kundalini activated. So so it's retraining your body system, your somatic intelligence. And when it surpasses your lower brain, which is trying to control everything, and the energy goes into your high brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, kind of when you do meditation, then you're retraining that part of the brain to be always in place of peace and quietness, versus when you're in the low brain, you're always having the chatter. Probably everyone experienced that. So it's reprogramming, retraining ourselves to be more in a state of peace and joy, and just not in the fear vibration, but more in that place of neutrality in the prefrontal cortex.
I do have a question. I hope I can take a tangent here. I was looking at your website, and just the picture is gorgeous that I see, that all the different colors with the different circles and everything in it. I'm not sure, what does that represent? And because for me, like, I've been connecting a lot with colors and music a lot lately in my journey, and I don't know, there's a lot in that I just find it's just fascinating, but it also, I'm sure it tells a story, right? It almost looks like a map of sorts, but
I'm not sure which picture exactly you're referring
so it's
to.
like it's like got a lot of colors with a lot of circles down the middle. It's shaped like a V, and then there's just a bunch of different lights, a bunch of circles down that go from bigger to smaller.
Yeah, so I think this is very, what you describe in is the quantum field. This is the scalar energy. So there, are you familiar with scalar waves? Do you know what those are?
Not necessarily.
So if you go back, are you familiar with Nikola Tesla?
Yes.
Okay, so, and what do we know about Nikola Tesla? So he was doing a lot of experiments way before his time, right? To trying to bring electricity, Wi-Fi to us when, you know, that I guess we were not ready, or power set B didn't want us to be ready for it. And so he actually was the one who was trying to bring back the scalar energy, which is the free energy. So in the field of information or the quantum, we have what called quantum waves, right? And or they're sometimes now actually called Tesla long waves. And so what you see in these pictures and these circles is kind of how this energy flows, circulate among each other. And so what Nikola Tesla tried to do is take those waves and create free energy from it. So to create those towers that he was working on. But if we go back to ancient Egypt, let's say in the pyramids, so even the structure of the pyramid actually in the obelisks was all operating from the scalar waves, from the scalar energy. So the Giza itself was standing on the Nile, and it was actually an electrical station. So every time the Nile would rise, there was energy that would be created, and then it would propagate through the pyramid, and actually, like Wi-Fi, was able to broadcast itself to the obelisks. So what you've seen is essentially the nature of how energy works. And we also have that within our field. So we have the toroidal field, right? So we ourselves also representation, because everything is holographic, right? We all kind of mirror in each other. Everything is geometry too. So like the Fibonacci sequence that available everywhere in nature and shows itself. Similarly is that, like the toroidal aspect of the energy, how it flows through a system, all around, up and down, is kind of operates in the same way. So actually, my husband and I have been playing a lot with quantum technology and learning how to, or re-remembering, I would say more correctly, from ancient times, how to break those quantum waves into quantum particles and imprint them on physical objects. And what we notice, the quantum energy is holds really well on copper and on crystals. So usually on metals and on crystals. And again, kind of going back to the basics. And in ancient Egypt, they all used copper and they used gold as like the main two metals for capacitor of energy or electricity. And that's why we have copper in our electrical wiring system as well. And crystals, of course, because they natural minerals for holding that type of energy. So that's like a whole different rabbit holes of quantum energy. But I think that's, yeah, I would definitely recommend to read about scalar and yeah, incredible new scientific discoveries that are happening right now with scalar and how that helps for health. And I really see that we're moving from the age of materialism and age of frequency into the age of quantum. That's where really all the technology is going right now. Not just quantum computing that everyone talks about in AI, that's one thing, but actually learning how to use these scalar technologies and other technologies to make us most optimal health-wise, and also for our development of our consciousness. I think these technologies are still very pioneering, but that's where we headed. Everything is moving really fast.
Do you find along your journey, as you've been exploring these different concepts and really absorbing and embracing it, do you ever find yourself overwhelmed by information overload, or does the information just kind of present itself to you as you're ready?
That's a great question. And I think all of us need to have really strong discernment these days because there's so much information overload. You're totally right, Ashley. And if you So I remember my past life as high priestess in ancient Egypt, right? And the information that I had in those secret special mystery schools was very revered, right? And it was very secretive, and only specific initiates had access to it for a reason. Each one had to go through specific tests to be ready for the next level. Now, fast forward with the age of the internet and disclosure and everything else, everything is out and open, which is beautiful. But on the flip side of it, it's just like too much, and you don't know what is what, and a lot of it is distorted. So my recommendation and how I've been addressing it is really to go through that I call it distortion filter. Like, does this resonate? Does this speak to my soul, or does it not? If it does not, and something feels off with it, and even conspiracy theories, there's so many right now, maybe I shouldn't go down that path, because even the conspiracy path can take you way into places and rabbit holes that bring you into lower vibrational state. So for me, ultimately, is like, how do this information makes me feel? Does this elevate my vibrational frequency? Does this help me on my soul path? Does this give me, some sort of crystallization of what I already understood? Or is this creates more noise? There's a lot of noise. So, and so I've learned through the years, and because I think I've been on this path a little longer than other people, I've learned how to discard the noise and just get to the truth of it. And if it feels that it's off, or there's something just doesn't resonate with my soul, my body, I say, or the teacher even, or that's just kind of been my ongoing process. I usually don't follow it at all, and really choose with consciously and intentionally the sources of information I receive these days, and who I listen to, who resonates with me, on who doesn't. And I think that's why we have certain podcasts doing really well, certain audiences we build, because people resonate with us because they know we speak the truth, and we speak it from authentic place, and we're not just trying to, bring information that is, just for the sake of information. So yeah, it's a great question. And I feel like a lot of friends of mine asking me these questions too today. They're like, what should I do? What should I listen to? Which modality should I, get certificate in? There's just so much, right? And it's not like one thing is right for one person versus the other. And I say, like, the best formula is like, what makes you most passionate? What excites your soul? If it excites you, it makes you feel joy, whether it's dancing, ecstatic dance, or I don't know, drinking cacao or on a Friday night with me and doing sound healing meditation, then do that. And maybe sometimes it's just staying at home and and taking it easy and being under the blanket. That brings you joy. Wonderful. So really listening, tuning into your own process and cultivating that internal self-love, like what fills your cup. Because what I'm seeing also, a lot of people are running into service mode and picking too many things, and then they get lost in all of it. So less is more. I think that's my other mantra. Does that resonate, Ashley?
Absolutely. So BJ and I are very much dreamers. We are very connected to, oftentimes not in control of our dreams. And I wondered with you, do you find your dreams impacted by messages, or have they been impacted as you continue your journey?
Yeah, I really learned over the years to go into the astral space with programs. So everything is holographic, right? It's like in the movie Matrix. So if you think, if we unpeel the layer, right, everything is code and everything is mathematical. Just like the binary numbers in the Matrix. I love that movie, right? They did such a great job, Wachowskis. And so similar with the astral. In the astral, we have a lot of different, there's high astral and there's low astral. So sometimes we process in just our emotions and experiences of the day. But sometimes there's also entities and things in the astral that are there too to there's a terminology called Lucian that are there to collect our kind of fear vibration, and I don't want that experience. So I think for me, I've learned to go into my dream space with kind of protocols and not consent to entities, not like set certain intentions to how I don't want to experience some things, unless those are things that are relevant for me and I want to just have certain experiences with, I don't know, some galactic family that I'm interacting with. So my dream space has been pretty clean, but I know people experience all kinds of things these days. And again, for me as a channeler, I try to keep my channel very pure, and that includes awake time and dream time. Some people say actually dream time is more awake than the wake time. So we got to do this type of prep too before we go to bed, really set boundaries maybe of what do we want to experience, how we want to experience, and I also practice a lot of remote viewing. So that's another thing. So I work on kind of hemisync is something that I don't know if you're familiar with, but it comes from Monroe Institute, where you synchronize your right and left brain. So I'd rather have the experiences in an astral, so to speak, consciously, where I take myself into theta myself, and I drop into that space versus like being attacked by some weird being. So if that makes sense.
Now, how do you control those boundaries staying in place once you fall asleep?
Yeah, great question. So that takes training, meditation, doing these meditations when you're awake. I do a lot of meditation when I wake up in the morning. So the hemisyncs that I mentioned, the remote view, and so I kind of creating lucid dreaming states, and being training yourself how to lucid dream. So when you experiencing things in the astral that are uncomfortable and you lucid enough, then you can control them, right? So then you get to choose and set those boundaries. I think the problem becomes when it's a repetitive chronic dream, let's say, and so why is that happening? Sometimes it's happening actually because we not paying attention to something in our wake reality, and it's just bubbling up as something we have to address. And if we don't address it in dream time, it actually comes up as a disease or some sort of body symptom. So all the bodies, so that's kind of more like the path that I've been learning through therapy work and shamanism, where each body symptom that we experience in is usually somehow correlated to like a deeper energetic trauma of sorts, or things we didn't process. It could be even a dream that we, a chronic dream that we didn't process, an emotion that we just didn't handle well that came up as a dream. We are very emotional beings, and that's why we're learning how to be here in this reality. And that's why we chose to be on Earth, because we have a whole full spectrum of emotions of all these star seeds, and it's beautiful, right? But it can be also challenging, and they can show up in our dream times and kind of haunt us. So yeah, I recommend to really spend the time doing some meditations, and guided meditations. So like learning how to be awake and guide in these guided states. There's so many on YouTube. So that's the beauty right now. Like you don't need to go and find a shaman. You can just like be in your bed and, but look into hemisyncs. Those are really interesting from Monroe Institute. I think I'm a big fan of that work. And those, are you familiar guys with the remote viewing? And
I've
that
heard
whole
of it.
thing? Yeah. So Monroe Institute was created by Robert Monroe, who's no longer alive, actually in the 60s, 70s. It was a program for the military. So they were training the soldiers to go into the field and through remote view and to be able to see sites in Russia, because at the time it was Cold War. So it was like intelligence operational thing that it was a secret program that would train the soldiers to do that through these astral projections, but controlled astral projections. So and now we have all the techniques from it. So it's really great.
So it seems like for me personally, and like you've mentioned, that a lot of people are waking up to their gifts, and just a lot of things are happening now. far more than they've happened, and maybe for a long time. Could you speak to the reason for that? And like, I'm trying to figure it out personally. I mean, it's a good thing. I like
Yeah.
it, and it's also, it just brings up more questions, but it changes you in a better way, in a more impactful way to, I guess, center you and bring you closer to your higher self. But yeah, why so many people, and why now?
Yeah, great question. So, so my understanding is, and actually Dolores Cannon talked about it, these waves of volunteers. So, since the time of especially the World War II, and when we threw those nuclear bombs on Japan, from Galactic Federation perspective, they realized that humans on Earth can create damage in universal structure, especially with the nuclear weapons. And the only way to raise consciousness on Earth, there's such a concept of law of non-interference, and they couldn't just come and interfere. So the only way to do that was from ground up, and they had to send in ground troops. And so there was a call to have souls come and incarnate here on Earth, from different star systems to raise consciousness on Earth. So we're right now in, I would say, fourth wave of volunteers. So those of us who were kind of born in the 80s, so called the indigo children, you probably heard of that terminology. And then there were the crystal children, the rainbow children. So my kid in 2013, I had him, he's the rainbow child. So he never had lives on Earth. This is his first time. So all these new children are coming in right now. And by 2027, there's going to be completely new children, meaning like their structure and their frequency is going to be very adapted to this reality. So that's one thing. And also from cosmological perspective, we right now, so the sun, the earth, the whole system is moving through the cosmos. We're moving through what's called photonic belt. You've heard of that concept. So we in these cycles of time. So if you think of like Atlantis and Lemuria, which was, 26,000 years and more ago, right? We were in the golden age, and then we went into the dark ages. So literally also positionally, we were far away from the galactic center. And so we didn't have access to as much light and quantum information for consciousness perspective. Now we're coming around. We are right now in what's called the Silver Age. We're coming into the Silver Age, and that's why the Mayan calendar supposedly was done in 2012. It was really the beginning of this new era. And then it's going to be Golden Age. In, I don't know, hundreds years forward, we not necessarily in this lifetime, we just stepping into Silver Age. It's just really starting. But from quantum perspective, so we moving through photonic belt, so there's more access to light, more access to information. Also the sun, every time it has a solar flash, the sun is actually a wormhole, like a black hole. It's spitting all these gamma rays, so lots of quantum light particles on us. These light particles are activating our DNA. They activate in our cellular memory. So all these things converging together right now, and time kind of feels like it's speeding up too. So we also moving towards singularity. All these things are converging right now for us to wake up. It's like what was 25 years ago available versus what is today. I'm seeing it, like even how long it took me to activate my light language versus how I'm seeing people coming online in 1 week. What took me 5 years is incredible. It's like, wow. And during COVID, like seeing how many people finally had the experience of being at home, all of a sudden not being distracted by the world and really tuning in and starting asking questions, like, because the process of awakening is a destructive process, but it's unpeeling what we know and starting to ask the big questions. Who am I? What's my role here? What's my sole purpose? Why I'm doing what I'm doing? Not just going 9-to-5 job and repeating the same thing again and again, like starting going into the deeper questions of ourselves. Also, Mother Earth. The Earth is a planet. She's evolving too. She's conscious. So Gaia Mother Earth, she's pretty new as a planet. So she's only been like millions of years. She's right now in her like teenage years. Let's say she's around 14. So she too is starting to ask questions of who she is. So our role as those who incarnated here right now and chose to be here as this waves of volunteers, we are here awakening ourselves, but as we awakening, we're also helping her to awake. Because even with the light language, why I'm going on these podcasts talking about, as you channel codes, as you channel light language, you activating, she's activating too, because you start channeling these codes for her as well. You becoming that bridge to bring those frequencies into this reality for her. So there's this like symbiotic relationship happening in real time as well. And so some of us who kind of woke up a little earlier and way shores and, we go around the world and we activate the reason I've traveled so much around the world, I literally guided to activate certain places around the world. So think of them like doing like meridian points, like doing acupuncture for Earth as well. She's gone through a lot of changes. And obviously the water is warming up. In Iceland, the glacier is melting. Glacier kept a lot of information from ancient times. I was able to connect to the energy of the glacier, and that information is, all in the water particles. So all of these things happening at the same time, and it's just going to speed up even more. Like we actually in this kind of, I see it as a spiral, and the spiral momentum is going to get really accelerated in the next few years. We're really in this transitional period right now. Those of us who volunteer to be alive here now, like that's a big role we took on to be in this craziness. Like honestly, each one of you who's listening, like kudos to you, like because it takes that kind of ground crew to go through this transitional period, through this like we moving from this period of polarization that we've seen right now with the wars, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Ukraine, and I'm from both regions. So it's really interesting for me to watch and not be like, to your question, Ashley, of like too much, information, not be also pulled into the information and choose sides. And that's what's happening right now with elections. Like all these polarization games that we playing, we have to really step aside and like be in a neutral position and see the bigger picture here. What is really happening? And so what's happening is that we're moving into this new blueprint, new Earth reality, and we're co-creating that together. I think the structures are not working anymore. The systems, the government, the financial system, the education system, everything has to go. And then from astrological perspective, because I'm also an astrologer, planet of Pluto is coming direct in January. Last time we had Pluto in Aquarius was at the time of the American Revolution. So, that's 200 something years ago, and French Revolution. So we are going through changes right now. We're going through consciousness revolution. Things have to, and Pluto is a planet of destruction. So things have to be destroyed first, so new structures can be born that are more supportive of our, of who we are, of our, a way of living. Because right now we're in the slave system. I mean, we all know that. And we're in the Rockefeller system too, that has been built, educational system been built to enslave us in factories. It doesn't work anymore. So we now get to choose what kind of reality we want to build. How does it support us collectively? And then you have all this, cosmological support happening in real time as well. Hope that explained, BJ. I know it's a big question you asked.
No, that's a lot, and I love your answer, and it just obviously just brings up more questions. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I really appreciate it because
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
that's
everything is macro and micro, as above, so below. So I think everyone needs to understand there's few things happening at the same time, and keep asking questions and looking for answers. I think that's the key. Stay curious.
Now, you mentioned we're in the Silver Age and there will be a Gold Age. At what age do we know, does time stop being so linear?
Oh, wow. What a question, Ashley. I think we are still in the, well, so from dimensional perspective, we're still somewhat in 3D, 4D right now, right? We haven't been transitioned fully into 4D. So time in 5D doesn't exist. So we are still a civilization that is bound by time. And I don't know in the future if we're ever going to be in this reality, unless Earth completely transitions at some point to 5D. And again, this has never been done before. Usually there's some sort of extinction event that happens where the planet moves on its own into different dimensional reality. This time, what we're trying is with all these people to move together. That has never happened. So when we move to 5D, that's when time doesn't exist. But for now, we just have to learn how to be with time. But yet, in some ways, we can operate here as those 5D. Like, when it comes to synchronicities and manifestation, how like when you feel in the flow and you think about something and then someone calls you because they just thought about them, you are already bend in time. You are quantumly jumping. Like you set in some intentions, you want to manifest something and you put in your intention into the field and then you detach it from the outcome and it arrives for you. That's quantum jump right there. So there's many timelines happening all in the same time. And so especially right now, there is what's called highest timeline. There's the highest timeline for the collective, and there's a war over time. So there is some, negative, I would say, ETs, and then there's the positive ones, and the one different outcome for us. But also as humanity, we collectively have to choose where we're going, and not everyone is on the same train with us. There's those who are choosing a completely different timeline than the one we choose in. So there will be this bifurcation, I feel, of the timelines. We're definitely headed there. There might be a transhumanistic timeline that's going to go completely different direction, that more organic timeline, or somewhere, or some sort of weave in and braid in between. And that's going to be interesting to see. But in my observation, with quantum jumping right now all the time, like even with political situations that are happening, like in the past, I used to be able to see time, like as a psychic, like at least a couple of years forward. Right now, it's changing almost every day that it's hard to see. It's like we're in this 0 point right now where we're constantly choosing different pathways.
Well, I kind of like that though, because that means that fate is not determined if the story is always changing.
I think fate is just like a prescription, right? Or like if someone gives you, let's say, notes for this beautiful musical piece, but each player gets to play that piece differently depending on their unique way of how they choose to play the notes. So yeah, there is a structure, because in the matrix reality we still have a structure that we have to operate within the structure, but we still get to choose how exactly that looks like. We still can create new patterns and new tapestries within the structure. So nothing is fully set in stone in that kind of way, which makes it a little more fun than saying that's exactly how it's going to be. Then there's no room to maneuver. No, we actually have free will here, which is really beautiful, which you don't always have in other dimensional spaces, which operate more in the hive mind. But here, each one of us has free will to do this versus the other. The key is to find that beautiful balance and alignment between free will, which I can also call an ego, and divine will, which is the spirit. Because the ego tends to take over and control things and resist things. And that's why things might not happen for you, not manifest for you, because you're in resistance mode. But if you let go and you surrender and you find that balance with divine will, then you're really listening to kind of the higher guidance, and then you're in the right trajectory.
This has been an amazing conversation. I feel like, speaking of time speeding up, I feel like it's gone by so quickly. Now, for listeners that want to reach out to you or learn more about you, where can they find more information?
Yeah, definitely. You can go to my website, dianadivine.com, or you can find me on YouTube. So my channel is Love Ripple Academy. So at Love Ripple Academy, also on Instagram, I'm at Love Ripple Academy, and also on TikTok. So yeah, I'm on all these platforms, but anything to do with sessions or connecting with me directly for like a free consultation, you can do that through my website, Diana Divine.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap this episode up?
Oh wow, so many thoughts, but I think just the big thing
Did
for
I just
me.
blow your mind, BJ?
Discernment.
If anything, it kind of gave me comfort in knowing that we do know more than we think, right? Like that's the big lesson I've taken from this is that it's not that we don't know, it's just that we have to waken ourselves up to it, right? Because it's not like you said, we're not learning things we already know them. We just have to waken ourselves up to them, and then obviously people like yourself have connected with all these different entities and things, and you have more of a insight into where we're going and what we're doing, and so people don't need to feel so lost or so without, I guess, their own purpose. And it's a way that people can come to you and find out more about their higher selves, and then go from there, right? Because it's not necessarily an outward thing that we're looking for. It's you. It's just something that's not just influenced by the 3D world. So
Yeah. And I always say, like, you are perfect. You have all the answers. It just, we're all in this multidimensional amnesia, and that's part of the game. So, in other, galactic systems, when you incarnated into a new life, you always remember your other lives. You remember everything. But part of this game is not to remember. So, which makes it kind of hard. It's like, but why not here? but I think that was part of the design for us to, remember in some ways. Like you said, relearn, remember. We have all the information. The information is all already in our soul, in our software, and it's just hosted in this hardware, and we just have to connect to it. And the great thing is, right now, everything is supporting us to build that connection. Like what I was talking about, all these activation of the DNA codes. DNA has memories, cells have memories. Everything is activating us. We start feeling energy, and all of a sudden it's like pop. Like things are just like you start seeing or feeling. And so I encourage everyone to, go outside in the morning. That's what I do. Like 7, 8 a.m. when the sun is still pretty low in the healthy zone, and just do some sun gazing, like connect to the sun, because the sun right now is our like best source of light, but also there's so many light codes coming from the sun, and just connect and just feel that energy, like just absorbing into your field, into your body. And if you start working with the sun every morning, you'll see incredible changes. I remember, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, I couldn't even look at the sun in the morning. Like I would tear up. And now I've trained myself in the healthy hours, not like when it's at noon, but like, 8 a.m., 7 a.m. is still good, at sunrise. And now I can like directly look at the sun, and like I receive so much information. So there's things we can do to, reactivate those memories. And that would be one of my, my recommendations.
What is it Rumi said? The inspiration you seek is already within you. You just have to be silent and still. So,
Exactly.
theme of the episode. I'm just kidding.
I love it. And Rumi was my favorite poem. So I love, Ashley, that you brought it all to
I love
to
Rumi.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
John Thomas, do you want to bring us home?
I sure do. Thank you again, Deanna, for coming on. It was been a very great episode, and I'm sure this will reach whoever it needs to reach, which is probably a lot of people. So yes, thank you for coming on, and thank you to our listeners for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And I'm BJ Segura.
If you have any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss amazing guests like Miss Deanna here.
Also, don't forget to check out 300podcast.com, where you'll find all of our past and current season episodes, as well as guest information and all kinds of awesome merch.
Until next time.